The sleep ban was introduced without declaring a state of emergency. One day, a message flashed across every screen: sleep is considered an ineffective waste of time. It was dismissed as an outdated biological flaw. The government offered stimulants, light regimens, and constant activity. At first, people joked. Then they stopped turning off the lights. The city became the same day and night. Darkness disappeared, and with it the feeling of peace. Sleep became a memory, no longer spoken of. A month later, the first wakefulness patrols appeared. They checked eye movement, blink rate, and head position. Cameras learned to record microsleep, the split second when the mind drifts. Fines were issued for this. Repeated violations meant forced stimulation. People began to fear not the dark, but silence. Any pause seemed dangerous. Even alone, people remained wary, as if sleep might suddenly overtake them and betray them to the system. The body resisted. People confused words, forgot names, lost the thread of conversations. But official reports said the opposite: productivity is increasing. Errors were dismissed as side effects of adaptation. Fatigue was rebranded as low motivation. Dreams became the most dangerous contraband. People secretly shared memories of what it was like to wake up. Some cried without understanding why. They felt like they had lost something, but couldn't remember what. Children were the first to adapt. Night shifts were abolished in schools. School shifts went on endlessly, replacing each other without a break. If a child closed their eyes longer than normal, they were taken away for remedial therapy. Parents were told that sleep makes a person unstable. Children grew up dreamless, but with constant anxiety. They didn't know what fatigue was, only irritation and emptiness. Their eyes were always open, but their gaze was unfocused. Illegal, dark rooms appeared. Abandoned basements, shielded from signals. There, people would lie down on the floor and allow themselves to close their eyes for a few minutes. It was more dangerous than drugs. Some woke up in tears, others in terror. Dreams returned in fragments, like memories from a past life. Some couldn't bear it and never emerged. They were found smiling. The system called it a rejection of reality. The protagonist worked as a flow operator. His job was to ensure that the city never stopped. He stared at thousands of screens where people moved, talked, and worked without pause. He prided himself on his endurance, until one day he noticed something strange. On one of the screens, a man simply sat down and closed his eyes. Just for a few seconds. But during those seconds, the system malfunctioned. The cameras lost focus, the sound became distorted. Sleep turned out not to be a weakness, but an error the system couldn't process. After that, he began to listen to himself. Gaps appeared in his head, strange images that weren't there in reality. He caught himself wanting to close his eyes, not out of fatigue, but out of curiosity. Something inside him demanded silence. He realized that sleep wasn't a shutdown, but a transition. People had lost not rest, but access to their inner world. Without sleep, consciousness became flat, linear, and easy to manipulate. He began searching for information. Official archives had been purged, but data remained in old autonomous storage facilities. Sleep was called a critical process of personality restoration. Without it, a person lost the ability to empathize, to doubt, to engage in internal dialogue. This is precisely what made sleep dangerous. It created people who could ask questions. The system didn't fight fatigue, it fought thinking. The system declared him a source of destabilization. His image was sent across all channels with the warning, "Dream Carrier." People were to avoid eye contact. But the opposite happened. Those who saw him felt relief. As if they could stop clinging to him. For the first time in a long time, fatigue ceased to be an enemy. It became a signal, not a mistake. The illegal rooms of darkness ceased to be secret. People no longer hid. They simply sat and closed their eyes right on the streets. It was scary and quiet. The patrols couldn't cope. Mass sleep was unstoppable. The system, designed to control the waking, proved helpless against those who voluntarily left their active mode. Algorithms began to collapse. The economy slowed, flows stopped, screens froze. But at the same time, people began to feel. Emotions, memories, fears, and desires returned. The world became chaotic, but alive. Sleep didn't destroy civilization, it removed its mask. It turned out that endless productivity was a form of slow extinction. The authorities attempted to regain control by force. Electric shocks, forced stimulants, 24-hour light. But the more they pressed, the deeper people sank into sleep. Sleep became a form of resistance. Closing their eyes meant refusing to obey. No one shouted or smashed the streets. People simply lay down. And in this silent action there was more protest than in any slogans. They no longer searched for the protagonist. The cameras stopped recording him. He seemed to disappear between frames. They said he slept somewhere in the city center, and that everything around him was always quieter. Some considered him a symbol. Others, a myth, needed to justify their own weakness. But everyone who fell asleep knew, sleep no longer belonged to the state. It had become personal again. Patrols intensified their checks. People were hooked up to wakefulness monitors right on the streets. Sleep became equated with sabotage. But something strange happened more and more frequently. The stricter the control, the more glitches occurred. People began to see the same images, hear the same phrases. The collective unconscious, deprived of an outlet, began to seep into reality. He fell asleep for the first time by accident. Not in a dark room, not intentionally. He simply closed his eyes for a second. And he dreamed. Short, vivid, frighteningly clear. In it, the city was dark and alive. People were asleep, and because of that, they seemed real. When he woke up, he realized, in that second, he felt more than in months of wakefulness. The system had registered a violation, but he was no longer afraid. He understood that without sleep, a person is just a shell. After that dream, he began to change. His thoughts became deeper, slower, but clearer. He noticed details that had previously passed him by. People's faces seemed distorted by constant tension. Conversations were empty. He realized, waking society didn't live, it functioned. Sleep was the ultimate act of personal freedom. Not rest, but the right to escape external control, at least for a time. And that's precisely why it was banned. He began transmitting the dream to others. Not with words, but with his presence. People around him began to yawn, lose concentration, and feel a strange warmth. Some closed their eyes for the first time in years and didn't resist. Those seconds of sleep triggered a chain reaction. Cameras malfunctioned, algorithms became confused. The dream proved contagious not like a disease, but like a reminder. As if the body were remembering what the mind had been forbidden. Sleep didn't return immediately. People slept in fits and starts, waking with the familiar fear. But gradually, the nights grew darker, and the days shorter. For the first time in years, the city was plunged into true darkness. And in this darkness, there was no threat. It didn't demand productivity. It allowed one to be. People learned to wake up again, not just turn on. The system wasn't officially abolished. People simply stopped talking about it. The economy was restructured, control was weakened, screens went dark. The world became less efficient, but more humane. Mistakes returned. As did forgiveness. People could once again disappear from view without explanation. Sleep remained illegal on paper, but legal in every home. Children asked, why weren't we allowed to sleep before? Adults couldn't always find an answer. How could one explain that rest was once considered a threat? That silence was feared more than noise. Sometimes at night, someone would wake from a dream full of light and endless screens. They would sit in the darkness for a long time, and then fall asleep again, this time without fear. The story of the sleep ban became a reminder. If a person is forbidden to close their eyes, it means they are not trusted. Sleep turned out not to be a weakness, but the last territory of freedom. As long as a person is able to fall asleep, they remain inaccessible to complete control. And every night, when the city turns off the lights, someone quietly falls asleep, knowing, as long as there is sleep, a person has not yet lost.